Extruding is one of the key tools you're going to be using for hard surface in Blender. So in this video, I want to do something fun. Let's see how many different ways of extruding in Blender we can find in this single video. Let's go. Now, vanilla tools coming first. There's quite a lot you can do with extrusion actually in vanilla Blender, surprisingly. So Shift-A, add a mesh, and the very basic extrusion is going to be go to edit mode, and I'm going to be using machine tools for it. So edit mode, select the face, E, and extrude, right? That's a very basic way of extruding in Blender. Now, by default, the extrusion is going to work along the normals of the face, and basically normals of the face are kind of like small lines indicating the direction of the face, or basically the orientation of the face in the space and how it's curved, bent, if it's flat or not, etc. If you want to watch a more detailed video on this, just hop on Josh's channel. He has a very good video that explains all these technical details. So in short, like if I select this face, I'm gonna be extruding it on this axis. If I select this one, by default I go this way. But you could change it. So for example, you could press E and then X and, you know, extrude it this way. And you would think, well, hang on a second, it's a flat face. Well, it isn't. And what happens, you see, you extrude all this shape on a Y-axis, so it appears flat, but it isn't, because if I go GY, you will see that the shape isn't flat. You can also hold Control to snap it to increments. So, you know, this could be something interesting to do as well. And if I extrude this one, it's gonna go straight. Yeah, that's how it works. Cool, awesome. So that's the basics. So now watch this, right? If I go Shift-A and Cube and select this one and press E and 2, what's going to happen is that the Blender is going to extrude this face by 2 units, which is in our case is going to be 2 meters, because by default this cube has 2 by 2 by 2, and now it's 2 by 2 by 4 because we extruded this, you know, on the Z-axis going up by 2 meters. So if I'm going to now press E2 and click and Shift R, I can actually repeat that as many times as I want. So it's going to be extruding it up by 2 meters as many times as I'm going to press Shift R, which is going to repeat the last operation performed, right? Now, there's another way of doing this, which is going to be extruding through the Alt+E tool, so the extrusion tool. So you're going to select this face, and I'm going to align myself from this side, okay? So like this, here, from the back, right? I'm going to Alt+E, and then I'm going to select this extrude repeat. And if I'm going to move my mouse, you see what happens is that I extruded this 10 times by default, right? 10 steps by 1 meter each this way. Now, the difference between this one and the previous example is that this one is dynamic as long as this menu is open. So you can change it dynamically, which is pretty bloody cool. So you could actually do the same thing by setting it to 2 meters, right? 2 units. Now, another cool thing about it is that you can offset this on other axes. So you can do stuff like that, which is pretty cool, okay? Awesome. Now you can also extrude stuff freely by selecting a face and going to side view, holding Control and pressing right click. And you can do it as many times as you want. Now, what you could do is you could combine it with add-ons like machine tools, and for example, align it here using Alt-R, you know, menu, right? And then grab this one here, right? And align this one, right? And grab this one and align it as well, right? And what you could do, right, is select all these, and we could just go Control 2, which is going to add loops with machine tools, and then Control 2 for subdivision, and you got this pipe segment. So you could do something like this. Now, another way of extruding stuff would be by canceling it and scaling it. So watch this. If I grab this face here and extrude it and cancel it, it's actually extruded, but you can't see that because both faces occupy the same space in 3D space on the x-axis. But if I'm going to press S, I'm going to be able to scale it. So now I can just either move it, right, like this, or extrude it further and create this kind of a shape. Now you could also do the same trick by selecting the loop here, pressing E, cancelling, Alt+S, and extruding outwards. It's actually the same tool as going to Alt+E and clicking on extruding faces along with normals, which is going to extrude them this way. Or you could extrude them on individual faces. So this is going to give you this result, which is kind of interesting, right? Now, if you want to extrude something down, like let's say you want to, drop this one down here, you could press E, but it's not going to really work very well for you because you can see it doesn't really do what you want. But you can go to Alt-E and extrude Manifold, and that's going to actually drop this down like this. Now, there's a better way of doing this, but for this you would need to use add-on called Machine Tools and a tool called Punch It, which is going to not only extrude shapes just like non-manifold extrude, but also allow you to clean stuff if needed and slant it on specific edges. So if I'm going to run a loop here and have an edge like this, and I'm gonna go to Alt-E and click on Punch It, you have to, by the way, enable Extrude in Machine Tools under the Machine Tools menu, so pay that on. Click on Punch It and then press E and select this edge here. You can see I can slide on this edge and create this kind of a shape, which is pretty bloody interesting, right? So then you can either cut the top off, I don't know, using something like Boxcutter, right? Or you could basically, bevel this and align it. But, you can create some really interesting shapes using these tools. All right, cool. And once we hear, talking about add-ons, Punch It has other, uses, but let me show you extrusion with Ops and Boxcutter. So you could use the tool for, remember I showed you this E-cancel, right? E-cancel Alt-S. Well, you could also use the Alt+M macro, so Q Alt+M macro and do the same thing, which is I think faster. So I prefer to use this one. And another really interesting tool for extrusions with Ops is going to be Q and Shift Curve Extract, which actually saves you a lot of time, just like Ops and Boxcutter. I mean, we have a course on this called Ultimate Guide to Ops and Boxcutter 2.0, and we claim that basically when you master these add-ons, you're gonna be able to save 800% of your time, so you're gonna be working 8 times faster. And let me show you that it's not a joke, I'm serious. So if I wanted to perform this this simple task, right, I would need to basically grab this face, Shift D that, press P and create a separate selection, grab this face, right, then go here and go to generate and solidify, and then solidify this outside. Okay, that's how many steps it takes. Whereas with Ops and by the way, if you were using vanilla Blender tools for changing between the object view and edit mode, you would need to press tab, then 3 for face, etc, etc. So it just adds a lot of steps, right? So this is so much quicker. Do you know what I mean? It's very quick. Anyway, going back to 4.5. So next thing what we're gonna look at is going to be spin. Actually, let me see if I'm not missing anything in here. We're gonna talk about spin a little bit later. That's a different spin. And other than this, I think we're good. Now, another tool I want to show is gonna be spin here on the T panel. Okay, so select the face, right, and click on spin. Now, this tool is interesting for creating. I mean, let me just grab a cylinder because it's gonna be easier to show you. So let me grab this face here and click spin. And now the spin tool works based off of the cursor, which is going to be a pivot point, and cursors here in the middle. We need to move it, so shift right click here, and you see the gizmo moves with the cursor, and you get this bar on top here, default number of steps. We could just nuke it to, let's say, 8 or whatever, and we need to change the axis to probably y-axis. There we go, and then click here on the plus and drag it and hold control, and you can actually create 8 steps perfectly for 90 degrees angle. And if you want to change it to a different angle here, we can go here and align ourselves like this, right click, shift right click here, then change it to y-axis or actually z-axis, and then spin it this way like that and click. And this is a very precise but very painful way of creating pipes. if you wanted to create pipes much quicker, I would suggest using Ops and Boxcutter. Again, you know, going back to this 8 times faster workflow, and I mean, it's not a joke, it's actually a fact. So watch this. If I grab a cube here and just, you know, run a bevel, actually grab both of them at the same time, run a bevel like this, then I'm going to select these edges and I'm going to go to curve extract, done. Do you see what I mean? And if I want it to be more, you know, more smooth, press S. You can press Ctrl+2 to subdivide it and you're done. Do you see what I mean? How fast this is? And check this out. You know, if you go to Vanilla Blender, the spin tool, what it does, it creates geometry, right? So you can't edit this anymore. Now this is a curve, which means you can still adjust it. Okay, I can adjust it. I can you know, press X to drop it down to a curve, basically just a curve. I can even go to Ctrl+A and Visual Geo to Mesh, which is going to change it to a mesh, and I can revert it back to curve by going here and curve extract. So it's super you know, it's super kind of flexible, and you know, since it's a curve, you can very easily, you know, keep editing it because it's a bloody curve, right? So you know, you can do it manually or just using Ops and Boxcutter, or like I said, you could basically, you know, convert it back to a mesh. So X, right, and Alt, Ctrl+A, Visual to Mesh, and come on, one more time. There we go. And then you got the curve, so you could just start creating, you know, more bevels here, and then convert it back into a curve. You know what I mean? So that's a way quicker way of doing this. And if you, by the way, want to create cables, then you should be using Cablerator. But anyway, going back to vanilla wise, so let's nuke this. However, spin tool is very useful for one part. Let me just turn on my machine. I cannot work with my machine tools. Machine tools is working. Let me just see this. There we go. Shading pi don't need it. Perfect. Okay. Peachy. Now next trick I want to show you, which is really cool, the same tool spin. I'm gonna do it in a different blender because the mirror here works better, because I can't stand vanilla blender mirror. But we're gonna be using the same tool. So here, select this edge, and we're gonna go to, you know, spin tool, and then we're gonna move the cursor, you know, somewhere here, right? And go on the y-axis and, you know, run this edge. Let's just run it around like this, okay? And we're going to actually remove all these, I think all these edges. I think that's half bevel. You see now this is a half bevel, more or less. And then we're going to mirror this to the other side. So we need to mirror this across the origin point like this. And then we're going to move the cursor. We just apply the mirror here. We're gonna move the cursor here, so Shift S and 2 edge, and we're gonna move the origin to, not origin, move the origin to cursor. And then we're going to mirror this across the Z-axis to the top. And you see now you're gonna get this perfect shape here, right? So you could use these, you know, you could use these tools to create geometry or perfectly angled bevels for creating, you know, all kinds of interesting shapes. So if you know, try to trace a model and you have a bevel curving upwards, then you could use this, which is a really cool tool. And you can obviously copy it, mirror it, you know, etc., etc. It's a very powerful tool. So anyway, that's gonna be spin tool. Now another spin tool, which is also in vanilla blender. I just stay here because I like the colors. So if I'm going to grab a plane and I'm going to combine these two here into one edge, right? And I'm going to move this edge to the bottom somewhere here, right? And then I'm going to go to edit mode, select the edge, Alt+E, and I'm going to use spin. And this is a spin tool that comes with vanilla blender, and you can obviously change all the angles here. So let's say set it to 0 and set Z to 0 as well. And we're going to get this kind of a situation, which is basically a cylinder made out of an edge. So anyway, that's gonna be spin extrusion. And I have one more really interesting tip to show you, okay? And this one is really cool. Now check this out. If I'm gonna have this sort of a situation, actually, let's go up, okay? So if I'm gonna have this kind of a situation here, and I'm going to delete all the faces, So only faces and this edge, and I'm left with these edges, right? If I wanted to, for example, extend it out, so I wanted to move this edge here, if I'm gonna press extrusion and X, I'm gonna be extruding this edge, but I'm gonna be creating a face. So I would need to go here, delete the face, delete the edge. A lot of work, right? What you can do is press Alt+D, and Alt+D is a way of extruding edges that's gonna be basically extruding just edges and pulling them from away from the verts, but it will not create a face. So you see, this is gonna be a really cool way of just as goes Alt+D, really cool way of creating let's say pipes, right? So Alt+D and an X and this, then you can grab all these all the corners here, Shift Control B to bevel them, and then just go to Mesh Tools and Curve Extract with Hard Ups, right? So there you go, and Bob Joe Uncle, right, and run Subdivision, and you got a pipe. Okay, so Alt+D is fantastic. Now don't confuse it with an Alt+D in object mode, because in object mode Alt+D is going to be creating instances. Okay, don't confuse these two. So if I'm going to go Alt+D here, I'm going to create an instance of this object, meaning I can edit either of this and they're going to be changing because they're linked here in this data, right, section. If I go to object mode and I link them, then the link is gone and they're no longer linked, and they're no longer an instance of one another. But this is a fantastic tool for example, copying screws or bolts around your mesh and editing all of them at the same time. And this includes adding mats and all kinds of stuff. So it's very useful, right? But anyway, that's also Alt+D, so don't confuse these two. And these would be all the tricks for extrusions. So hopefully you enjoyed this, and like I said, if you're interested in learning deeper and going deeper in terms of hard surface modeling, all the tools, menus, and the whole workflow, because you can watch as many videos on tips as you want, but you're gonna be forgetting them if you're not going to be learning them in a specific setting. And a properly structured course is going to actually teach you how to use them properly in the workflow, and by repetition you're going to be consolidating this knowledge in your brain. And instead of just running from video to video and keep on forgetting what you've learned, you're gonna learn the whole workflow. So I will highly recommend you do that, and go ahead and check our course, the Hard Surface Accelerator, and the link is in the video description and in the pinned comment underneath the video. And if you're a little bit more advanced and you know how to use Blender but you would like to work with add-ons, then look no further than the ultimate guide to Hard Ops and Boxcutter 2.0. The course is fantastic. It's gonna cover all the tools, all the menus, everything, going very deep, including the full-on workflow where we're gonna be modeling this cool truck. So you're gonna learn a ton, and I'm also gonna show you all the tricks and tips and hidden techniques and advanced tools so you can create your own personalized workflow, which is really, really valuable. And the link to the course is also in the video description and the comment pinned under the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.